The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, laughter, and the glitter of wealth. Isabella stood at the center of it all, her gown a masterpiece of silk and diamonds. Every eye followed her as she moved through the crowd. Her fiancé Alexander, one of the richest young men in the city, by her side. To anyone watching, she had everything a woman could dream of: wealth, security, and a man who promised the world. Yet deep inside, Isabella felt an ache that no amount of jewels could soothe. Her life had always been planned for her. From the schools she attended to the man she was expected to marry, every choice had been carefully designed by her parents. Alexander was charming enough, but there was something behind his polished smile, something cold and calculating. He was used to owning things, and Isabella often feared she was just another acquisition in his growing empire. That night, as the orchestra swelled and dancers twirled, Isabella slipped away to the garden for a breath of air. She needed a moment, without the heavy perfume of wealth and expectation. As she wandered down the marble steps, her eyes caught a young man working near the edge of the estate. He was arranging lanterns along the pathways, his hands rough from labor, his clothes simple and worn. He paused, sensing her gaze, and their eyes met for just a heartbeat. There was no reason for her to feel the jolt that rushed through her chest, but she did. He looked away quickly, almost embarrassed to have been caught staring at the glittering fiancé of Alexander. Isabella, however, could not look away. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as an ornament or a prize, but as a person. Days turned into weeks, and Isabella found reasons to wander outside more often. She learned that his name was Daniel, a worker hired to tend the gardens and maintain the grounds. He spoke little at first, but his quiet kindness drew her in. Unlike Alexander, who spoke in grand promises, Daniel listened. He noticed the small things, how she sighed when no one was near, how her smile never quite reached her eyes. It was dangerous, this growing connection. Isabella knew it. Rumors could destroy reputations, and Alexander was not the kind of man to forgive betrayal. Still, she found herself lingering near the gardens, her heart pounding every time Daniel's voice broke the silence. Their conversations were simple, about the weather, about books she had read, about dreams that seemed too fragile to say out loud. Yet within those words was a tenderness that she had never known. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the lanterns flickered to life, Isabella confessed something she had never told anyone. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel looked at her, his brow furrowed with concern. "Then whose life is it?" She couldn't answer. The truth was too heavy. Their bond deepened in secret, though neither dared to call it love aloud. Isabella's heart wavered between duty and desire, between the world of diamonds and the dust beneath Daniel's fingernails. Suspense followed her every step. Every glance they shared felt like stolen fire. The turning point came during a stormy night. Alexander had hosted another grand dinner, his voice booming with confidence as he spoke about his future investments. Isabella sat silently, her mind elsewhere, until she overheard something chilling. Alexander was speaking with one of his associates, and his words cut through her like a blade. "She will marry me, whether she wants to or not. She understands nothing of business. All she needs is my name and my money. Love doesn't matter. Control does." The words froze Isabella's veins. She excused herself, her heart pounding, and fled to the garden where Daniel was sheltering tools from the rain. When he saw her pale face, he immediately asked what was wrong. With trembling lips, Isabella told him everything, the way Alexander viewed her, the prison she felt herself walking into. Daniel listened, his jaw tightening with every word. When she finished, he spoke with quiet intensity. "You're not a possession, Isabella. You're more than his pride and his wealth. But if you stay, he'll make you believe you are nothing." Tears welled in her eyes. "And if I leave, where would I go? What would I be without all this?" Daniel reached for her hand, not boldly, but gently, as if offering her strength. "You'd be free. And maybe for once, you'd live for yourself." That moment was the spark that ignited everything. Isabella began to see the walls of her life for what they were, gilded cages. The suspense grew heavier as Alexander noticed her distance. His questions became sharper, his grip on her arm tighter. When they walked in public, she smiled less, and every time she looked at Daniel, she wondered if Alexander could sense the truth pulsing in her chest. Finally, the breaking point arrived. A week before the wedding, Alexander discovered Isabella in the garden, speaking with Daniel. Though nothing improper had happened, Alexander's fury was immediate. He dismissed Daniel on the spot, threatening him with ruin if he ever set foot on the estate again. Isabella tried to protest, but Alexander silenced her with a chilling warning. "Remember who you are, Isabella. Without me, you are nothing." That night, Isabella lay awake, torn between fear and longing. The diamonds on her dresser glittered in the moonlight, mocking her with their cold beauty. She thought of Daniel, his rough hands, his quiet strength, his refusal to see her as anything less than human. For the first time, Isabella realized that she would rather have nothing with Daniel than everything with Alexander. The morning of the wedding arrived. Guests filled the grand hall, their laughter echoing as Alexander waited proudly at the altar. But when the music swelled and the doors opened, Isabella did not appear. Instead, she was racing down the back roads of the estate, her gown trailing in the dust, her heart pounding with every step. She found Daniel at the small cottage where he had taken shelter after being dismissed. He looked at her in shock as she burst through the door, breathless and trembling. "I can't do it," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can't live a lie anymore. I don't want diamonds. I want you." For a long moment, Daniel simply stared, as though afraid this was a dream that would vanish. Then, with a quiet determination, he nodded. "Then you've already chosen. Isabella." The aftermath was chaos. Alexander raged. The city gossiped. And Isabella's parents despaired at the scandal. But none of it mattered. For the first time in her life, Isabella felt light, as though she had stepped out of the shadows. She and Daniel had little, just enough to get by. Yet in the quiet mornings, when she woke to the sound of his laughter, Isabella knew she had everything. She had walked away from diamonds, but she had found the rarest treasure of all. Love freely, chosen, and in the end, that choice changed everything.